Cascadian doesn't even grow its own food anymore. Instead, the company buys produce from large organic industrial farms, many of them monocultures. On the Cascadian package, there's a picture of a pretty little farm, the organic commune. The place still exists, but it's just for show. I guess so they can take photos of it. One overcast morning, Gene Kahn himself drove me out to see it, about 75 miles northeast of Seattle. We followed the twists of the Sagat River in his new forest green Lexus. His vanity license plate says organic. Kahn is a boyish looking man in his 50s. He spoke without regret about the companies he's made along the path from organic farmer to agribusiness executive. He explained that part of the idea behind Cascadian was to get folks to eat whole foods instead of processed foods. They wanted people to be able to buy their food from local farmers instead of from big corporations. But somewhere along the way, Khan decided that it was impossible to make all of those changes. So he decided to focus on how food was grown. You have a choice of getting sad about all that or moving on, he told me. We tried hard to build a cooperative community and a local food system, but at the end of the day, it wasn't successful. This is just lunch for most people. Just lunch. So Khan, like some other organic farmers, started following the model of the industrial food chain. Cascadian started adding value to some of its food by freezing berries or making them into jam. Once they started processing food, they discovered they could make more money by buying produce from other farmers than by growing it themselves. The demand for organic food really jumped in the year 1990 after the Alar food scare. Alar was a chemical conventional growers sprayed on apples to help them ripen. In 1990, the Environmental Protection Agency found that alar could cause cancer. Suddenly, the demand for organic apples and all sorts of organic produce shot through the roof. People who had never thought about organic food started buying it. Organic food companies saw their business boom overnight. Some, like Cascadian, borrowed money to increase their production. Having borrowed too much, then when the rush to buy organic food slowed down, Gene Kahn was forced to sell control of Cascadian to Welch's. The hippie commune was now under the control of corporate America. Other large agribusiness corporations started paying attention to organic food. It wasn't because they suddenly saw the error of their ways. They just recognized that a growing number of consumers wanted organic food, and they wanted a piece of the business. Gerber's, Einz, Dole, ConAgra, and ADM all bought organic brands or started their own. Now, all sorts of food with labels like natural and organic began to show up in supermarkets. Those words had become great marketing tools, but what exactly did they mean? In 1990, Congress passed a law telling the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, to decide on some rules for organic food. What followed was a great debate to determine the future of the organic industry. On one side of the fight were the agribusiness corporations, which had jumped onto the organic bandwagon. They fought to define organic as loosely as possible. For example, they wanted the right to call genetically modified food, GMO, organic. They also wanted to be able to fertilize their organic fields with sewage sludge. At first, the USDA went along, but in 1997 it proposed a very loose set of rules that gave agribusiness everything it wanted. In response, there was a huge outcry from small organic farmers and the public. A flood of protests forced the USDA back to the drawing board. One big question was whether there could be such a thing as organic processed food. Gene Kahn sat on that board that set the new standards. He argued that the rules for organics had to allow synthetic additives and preservatives. Without synthetics, processed foods like TV dinners just can't be manufactured. Many people from old organic movement argued that to put synthetics in a processed food and then call it organic was a fraud. They said there could be no such thing as a truly organic Twinkie or TV dinner. In the end, Kahn's side won out. That's why there are now organic processed foods, although still no organic Twinkie. These new rules cleared the way for a huge growth in the organic food market. If we had lost on synthetics, Gene Khan told me, we'd be out of business. I guess I missed the old Cascadian, the one on the package, or at least I missed the idea of it. This just didn't fit my picture of what an organic farm should look like. Get over it, Gene Khan told me. Just because a farm is big doesn't mean it isn't organic. The important thing, he would argue, is that behind every organic TV dinner or chicken stands acres of land that will no longer be doused with chemicals. I could see his point. This is clearly a great thing for the environment and the public health, so I decided to go see some industrial organic farms for myself. Khan sent me to visit a large organic farm operation called Greenways in California's Central Valley. That's where they grow vegetables for Cascadian Farm frozen dinners. Greenways Organic is really 2,000 acres of organic farmland tucked into a 24,000-acre conventional farm. They gave me a chance to compare the two types of farming side by side. Even up close, it's almost impossible to tell them apart. The crops, the machines, the crews, and the fields look the same. The big difference is one you can't see. For every chemical that is put on the conventional fields, Greenway finds a substitute for the organic fields. In place of petrochemical fertilizer, Greenway's organic acres are fed with compost from nearby horses, farm, and by poultry manure. Instead of toxic pesticides, crops are sprayed with natural substances like Bt, a pesticide made from a common soil bacteria. Organic farming rules do not allow chemical weed killers, so Greenways has to use other methods to fight weeds. Even before the crops are planted, the fields are watered to get any weed seeds to grow. A tractor then plows the field to kill them. This is repeated several times. Later, when the crops are high, farm workers use propane torches to burn the weeds by hand. The result of all of this hard work is fields that look just as clean as if chemical weed killers had been used. No chemicals means no toxic runoff into the rivers and means oceans. But it turns out that plowing the land over and over damages the soil almost as much as chemical weed killers do.